Okay, we're rolling.
Okay, we're here with William Giaconetti, Bill. Bill, tell us a story of your family, the history of your family coming here, and the family occupations, and the places they lived, and all that sort of thing, as part of Chicago Italian-American history.
Okay, first of all, my father Natal, who came to the U.S. he came in about, I'd say 1920.
Okay.
And he got on a boat in Napoli. He was from Calabria, Cosenza, outside of Calabria. And he got on the boat and landed at Ellis Island.
Was it Cosenza itself, the town?
No, he was in a little town called Cadole, which is in kind of a little more mountainous region of Italy.
And were they farmers or?
Absolutely, he was a farmer. My mom was a housekeeper and a farmer, but my mom was also a fantastic seamstress.
Were they married before they came?
Yes, they were.
Tell me a little bit about your mother.
Okay, my mother Teresa, and her maiden name was Miniaci. Okay. And her married name was Giaconetti.
Giaconetti.
Yeah, which they made a lot of mistakes coming in through Ellis Island when they printed it out. So our name comes out as Giaconetti with a J at the beginning and a Y at the end. Giaconetti with a J at the beginning and an I at the end. And then our real name was Iaconetti.
Okay, so you had something of a name change. But your father was not the first in his family or from his town to come.
No, his brothers, two of his brothers came here about 4 years before that. They came from the same little town, and they settled in Chicago on St. Louis Avenue.
Uh-huh. Your father would have been born in what year?
1897.
1897. So in 1914, he was, 17 or something?
Yeah.
He would have been primed for the draft for World War I.
Yes.
And so do you know anything about his involvement in World War I?
Yeah, you hear all the hand-me-downs, because I actually wasn't even born yet, and they said that, and my sister talked about he was an Italian mountain fighter. It was called an Alpini, and they were probably the best trained fighters in the world at the time.
Mm-hmm. And he was in northern Italy. And you know that you can get documents from the Italian government that show something about his discharge and all that sort of thing. So.
Well, when I was in Italy, it was hard to find a lot of the stuff that we wanted to get because of the name. In the U.S., they called him Natal Giaconetti with a J and a Y, and that messed us up. Our whole lives are in our own families. We have different spellings of our name, and it was kind of frustrating. But now I got it all documented here in the way it's supposed to be. And the other thing I want to say with my father, when he first came and his two brothers settled here, my mother was, he sent for my mother 6 years later. Oh. He had to work on the railroad. He laid railroad from Chicago all the way to Montana, all the way kind of northwest.
Now, did he do this as part of a group or?
No, he was just a laborer. He said they had to fight for their jobs every day, but they followed the railroad system because that's the only one that would hire them. Mm-hmm. And the thing about my mother, what I wanted to mention is when my mother came to the U.S., they put her on a hospital ship. Oh. On the hospital ship, you got quarantined, and they just didn't understand her. She tried to tell them, I have a heart valve problem. I'm not like contagious. And then finally they figured that out when she got to Ellis Island. They said she's not a threat because my oldest brother was with her, George Jacinto, which is his real name. And they had to kind of get separated for a little bit because, he's a young boy, was I think 6 years old, and she was saying, where you bring, don't worry, we'll bring him back. We just have to have you checked out for these diseases. She says, I don't have any diseases. I have a heart problems.
So
Heart
you had your family experience a separation of family at the border.
Yes, they did. But my mother knew one thing, that all they have to do is bring my little Georgie back to me tonight.
Yeah. Okay. So that was an experience there. Let's get back to your father was working on the railroad with his brothers.
Two brothers. He has brother John and his brother Dominic.
And they had come earlier.
Yes.
Did they speak English at that time?
No, but I'll tell you, the Jack and Eddie boys learned fast. I was amazed how fast they learned. They pretty good at it, and so they assimilated right away. They wanted to learn how to speak English, and they naturally knew how to speak Italian. So they worked hard at it.
Did they have much? How far did they go in school in Italy?
Very, very sad. Very intelligent, real people, good people, but not highly educated. I don't even know if I don't even know if they went into high school. If they did, it was very
Or fifth grade, or
probably to 8th or 7th or 8th grade.
Okay. So, do you know? Tell us where your father worked, and how do you know that?
Well, mainly from my sister, who now is 83 years old. My sister Gloria. Everyone else is dead. You get too old.
Yeah.
What happens? You lose all your friends and relatives. But my sister documented some of the stuff, and she told us about her father, and then there were other documents that she found when we talked about the railroad. They ended up going to. I think they were in Helena or Butte, and that's where my Uncle John established his family, and his family is still there. And when my father first went there, they had to get in line and fight every day for their job.
Oh, yeah.
You had other immigrants from other countries. You didn't just get your job. It wasn't easy. And he said that's what they did, and that's how he saved the money. He said, if I don't save money here, I could never get my wife from Italy to her.
Do you remember any ways that they saved money?
Well, mainly from working. See, what my Uncle Dominic did for my brother and my Uncle John did, wherever they went, they lived together. So he had no overhead, paid nothing except for some of the things he wanted to do. When they were in Montana, shortly after they got there, my Uncle John was able to find a little place. And when they were working there, my dad stayed there. When they were in Chicago, he stayed by my Uncle Dominic. And that was the only way you could make it, because you didn't make enough money. And my dad was a hard worker, and he just, good people, nice people, wanted to assimilate, wanted to learn the American ways. And, he worked at it every single day. That was his first job, but then I'll tell you about the second job he had.
Okay, so came in 1920, worked on the railroad for 6 years, and then what happened?
Call for my mother.
Okay.
Had to send the money.
Okay.
And she came here with a little canvas bag. My dad came here with almost nothing. He just clothes. And Uncle Dominic says, "Don't worry, you come by me, we'll take care of you." And that's what he did. They landed first at Ellis Island. And he had some relatives living there in the Bronx and Brooklyn and around there. But he wanted to follow my Uncle Dominic, who was like the patriarch of the family. He's like 12 years older than my brother.
The oldest brother, okay.
And that was the next move,
Okay. So they got married here?
No, they were married. My mother and father were married in Italy. And they had...
In person? There wasn't a proxy wedding?
Yes,
okay.
Because George, when he left, I think she was pregnant with George. So around, I don't know the exact dates, but it ended up that 6 years were the time when George was 6 or 7 when he came here, and that was the first time he ever saw my brother.
So your mom was a single mother in Italy
Yes.
for 6 years or something like that.
Picked tomatoes in her spare time.
Uh-huh.
Worked in the field. They lived on They lived on a little spot in a tomato farmer owned it.
Mm-hmm.
It was a little shack. I went to see it for myself. It was like a horse barn, and they lived in there. It was this barn type structure, and they picked tomatoes to earn money.
And your father finally got the money. She came back. And where did they settle?
They settled in the city of Chicago, and they were that's when they first started. And I somewhere on Trumbull Avenue, all kind of on the west side of the city of Chicago.
Oh, okay, sort of an extension from the near west side, the Taylor Street area, or
My father started in a place there. Then he moved to Grandin, Ogden. When he was by himself, he stayed there for a while. And when he had enough money to find a little place, which was long after he was with my Uncle Dominic, because my Uncle Dominic had a lot of kids, and it was crowded in his house too. So how long can you stay? So for short periods of time. But then when they came and settled in the U.S., I remember them talking a lot about the area of Chicago and Pulaski.
okay.
So that was the area, and at first they tried. My dad was working hard trying to save every penny to get a little place, and he couldn't do it. So they had to rent, and everywhere they went, eventually with all the children, it was hard to find a spot. Nobody wanted to rent to them, so.
They didn't want to rent to them because they had children or because they were Italian?
Well, see, we don't know that. I think it was more they didn't understand, and they figured there's a lot of kids that they're going to cause problems and be noisy, and that wasn't the case because my dad was very strict about stuff like that. We moved into different areas, especially when I could remember. My dad always said, you have to respect the neighbors and you have to keep your mouth shut and not start because we're new here.
Okay.
And our neighbors were our neighbors in our neighborhood where we ended up growing up were Czechoslovakian on one side, Polish on the other side, Irish across the street, and on our block, there were some Italians, but not very many.
Not many.
He wanted to make sure that we were accepted.
So what job did he do when he settled down in Chicago with your mom?
All right, my father got a job south side, way I think south on Cicero Avenue, was a metal foundry, an extruding place, and that's where he stayed. And that's where he worked. He worked there for 43 years, but when working there, I went to work with him one day.
Okay.
And I said, Pa, do you do this every day? He says, yeah, what's wrong with it? I says, oh, well, there's a lot of things. Maybe I'll tell you a later date. But his two best friends he worked with, Mexican fellow and a black fellow. These were his two buddies that worked in this place for all these years. And when the Mexican guy made special food, they shared it. When the black guy made special greens and stuff, they shared it. When my dad made Italian food, they made sure they shared it because my mom made most of it. And so I went to work with him one day, and I said, Pa, this is where you work. He says, yeah. I says, okay. I said, when do we take a little break? He said, what are you talking about? We don't take a break. I said, well, don't we go out to lunch? He says, go out to lunch? He says, we have lunch right there sitting on the end of those metal beams, and we eat right there every day. I said, oh boy, I says, and he's doing this all for his family. I mean, here's a guy working every single day doing the same thing, but he loved it anyway because he knew that's how he's gonna raise his family.
How old were you when you visited his workplace?
when I went with him, my mom was still alive, so I had to be 12 years old when I went there. And I walked in, and his two buddies, hey, little Willie, we heard a lot about you. Because I was William, Bill, but they really called me Willie. Well, we heard a lot about you. And I says, you did? Because my dad wasn't a real talkative person about stuff like that. He liked the personal things to be personal, but these guys knew exactly who I was, what I did. He said, you're the little guy that helps Natal squeeze the grapes every year. I says, yeah, he told you that? He says, because I had been doing it since I was 8 years old, and he taught me, and I knew how to squeeze those and big and strong from that. But so my dad basically, and when he got home, I told my mom, I says, Mom, she says, I don't know, I've never been there. I says, it's like an inferno in there.
Yeah.
But he doesn't, and you couldn't change it.
Did he have a garden too?
Oh yeah. My mom had a garden, he had a garden, and he had to have his little garden, something to do.
Okay. And besides making wine, what other kinds of things did they do at the house?
Well, my dad actually had to buy the grapes from him because you couldn't grow enough. But he did have his own grapevines that he prided himself in. He had 2 fig trees that we had to bury every year. He said, we have to do. I said, Pop, what are we doing? He says, you got to keep it warm. So he did that. My mom had all her other. She had basil, basilico. You had to go get that. She had all the stuff we put in the spaghetti sauce. So if it went in there, she had it in the garden, and I had to go get it. She also grew other little vegetables in their garden.
And was it a very big lot that you had?
No, it was small. No, it was really small.
What about making sausage and that sort of thing?
Well, my mom and dad, my mom was the main cook and she made a lot of stuff, but that's one thing that they didn't make because as we got older, we had a little place in Chicago that made the best you could ever taste, Porchetti's, and we would go there and get it. But my mother, she made fresh bread and cooked every single day. But whenever you woke up in the morning, because there were so many of them, there ended up being 7 of us. By the time we would eat 2 or 3 loaves of bread, and I could see it till this day, rising on the stove. They put it in a big pot. I could see it coming right up. And from when I was a little boy, I helped her make that. And every single day, she's, Billy, my hands aren't as strong as they used to be. So I would knead the dough and roll it for her and everything. And I said, Mom, what's the deal with that dough? She says, we make it, we mix it. It grows right out of the pan. She says, yeah, that's the yeast. She says, if it doesn't grow, throw it in the garbage. I said, what do you mean? She says, that dough has to grow. So I learned from there. I says, you got to give things time to work, and if they don't, says the yeast was no good. So the little things that you look back in your life and you see, it's just impressive to me, and it was important. Not that we were angels, because me and my brother, there were 7 of us. There were 6 boys and 1 girl, and we were little stinkers, and we did mischievous things, but my dad was a fanatic. You never ever disrespect people, and you never steal anything. So you couldn't. Yeah, if these glasses were here, I couldn't touch them. So they're not yours. Put them down over there. And so he had certain things. He had things that you had to do properly because he figures. We're a family, and we wanted to keep our name. He never wanted to have his name discouraged or his name problem with his name.
What about the role of church in your family growing up?
My mother went every morning to church, and she would take me with because I hung with my mother. She was my heart, and I hung with her from a little boy. So I could remember she's holding my hand. We're walking to Our Lady of the Angels. That's a whole nother story. That was our parish. So we would go to Mass, be on our way to Mass. She said, Billy, I'm going to give you a dime. Put it in the basket when a guy comes by. Put it in if we got to put it in there, you got to give that to the Lord today. So I'm getting close. I said, Ma, can I go get some candy with the money? She says, no, absolutely not. Put that dime right. So I had to do that because we had the candy store right next to the Angels. They had the best stuff in there, and you know that's the way they were. And like I said, she was a seamstress in the family, but those were the early years. And
did your mother ever work outside the home?
yes, always.
What did she do?
She was a seamstress. She could make wedding dresses, pillowcases. She could make tablecloths, and she could make any suit you wanted. So everybody wanted to hire her, but she wasn't real healthy at the time, and you know she needed time to take care of us. But some nights she'd be up 2 o'clock in the morning finishing jobs that she'd done, wedding dresses, unbelievable wedding dresses.
So was she like a freelance, or did she
Freelance.
work for Hartshafter and Marks or something?
No, she was. My brother did, but she did that. My mother worked at all the Jewish-owned stores on Chicago Avenue and on Milwaukee Avenue, and they would sub it out to her, and they would give her the orders and whatever they had, and she would go home and do it. And I'm like, Ma, beautiful crochets. I'd be like, where'd you learn this? She said, I learned this in a little village in Italy, and she did it. When she got older, I had to thread all the needles and put them because she couldn't see good anymore. But still working, and if she wasn't working, doing the stuff when she got a little older, and the amazing thing about it wasn't really funny, is she would sometimes like babysit or watch older people, and I can remember walking almost all the way to Hummel Park. And on the right hand side, there's a big building there. And we had to go there, and she would watch this lady, you know, maybe 3 times a week. And we walked all the way from our house to go there. So just hardworking, and you know, you gain respect for people like that. A lot of respect.
And what about you?